Hey guys, how you doing? This is Coach Clay with Team Unmatched Nutrition. So yesterday I told you guys I was going to be doing a video on insulin. And I don't want to just do a video on the drug insulin, but I want to do a video for you guys explaining the importance of insulin in our body, what our body does, insulin sensitivity that we have, what our pancreas does, our beta receptors do, and why it's dangerous, why it's beneficial. And I'm not going to give you any protocol advice at all. This is not suggesting anybody use it. It is one of the most dangerous things there is out there. If you do not know what you're doing, you should never ever touch it. So let me repeat that one more time. Guys, if you do not know what you are doing, if you're not prescribed it by a doctor, if you don't have someone walking you through it that tells you this is what needs to be done, do not touch insulin. Insulin is a hormone in our body, okay? It is something that is very, very important in our body. It is something that can send you into a diabetic coma or even kill you if it's misused or used improperly. You need to understand that. This is highly important that you understand it, because I have gotten questions, protocols, things sent to my Instagram that are crazy about insulin. And if you're ignorant about insulin, do not use it. Do not use it. It is not an answer to lack of hard work. It's not an answer to going in and getting big. So let's start with this. First and foremost, insulin is created in our body. Our pancreas job is it creates insulin to a glucose spike that we have in our body and shuttles that glucose into the muscle in form of glycogen along with other nutrients. You also get a sugar spike with proteins and other things, and it shuttles those nutrients also, although those spikes are much smaller. So let's talk about bodybuilding use first. When you're eating mass amounts of food in bodybuilding, the body becomes insulin resistant because we eat more and more food the bigger we become. More and more carbs are coming in. It's harder for our body to shuttle those carbs from point A to point B, get them inside the muscle. So insulin can be used to relieve the pancreas of the hard work that we're putting on it, on that extra duty that we're putting on for all the food that we eat. And to help relieve that, you would take a certain amount of IUs, depending on what you're using, whether you're using a Insulin or a Humalog, whether you're using an R, whether you're using a long-acting or a short-acting, whether you're using Lantus. You know, there's a lot of different types of insulin out there. You need to know which one you're using and how to use it and why to use it. If you're going to use it, you should be very, very educated on it. It isn't something that you just make a decision and you start using. You have to educate yourself. You have to get professional advice. I mean, you have to remember, insulin, a type 1 diabetic is given insulin from day one, or from the time they become type 1 diabetic, born with their diabetic issues. They're given this insulin because it's a hormone they're lacking. Type 2 diabetics have created an insulin resistance on their body and have to take it because of the resistance that they have. Bodybuilders try to use insulin to not become type 2 diabetic. That's the truth. A lot of people assume automatically it's simply for the size that it can get, for the anabolic response that it gives. But when you're a major, massive bodybuilder and you're eating tons of food all day long, bringing in tons of carbs, because you want that glycogen response into the muscle and you want to grow and you want to get bigger, we take the insulin to relieve the pancreas of its job, to help it out some. Now, if you're using a short-acting, like a Humalog or Novolog, you're going to get a fast-acting spike. It's going to come and it's going to go. It's going to be gone. If you're using something like a Insulin R, it's going to be a little bit longer and it's going to have a double spike. If you're using something like Lantus, which is really, honestly, one of the better forms of insulin out there, you're using it, you know, AM and PM. You're even dosing it when you go to sleep, something you would never do with a log, like a Humalog or a Novolog. You wouldn't want to dose that before bed because you can become extremely hypo, pass out, become into a diabetic coma. It's not something that you want to play with and take at those periods of times. So all the questions and comments that I'm getting is, how do I do this, or how do I do that? Do you have any experience with this? Do you have people do this? What would your opinion be on this? All talking about insulin, and they're abundant, and they become more and more abundant over the last year and more prevalent, where people are asking questions about it. Primarily, I want to do this video because you got to understand what you're messing with. You're messing with a natural hormone coming in your body. There can be major repercussions and side effects if used improperly. There could be, I mean, catastrophic things can happen to your body, guys. You have to understand this. Taking a fast-acting insulin and then being fasted does you no good. It's going to eventually, once that insulin hits and hits its spike, it's going to cause you to become very hypo. You're going to get the sweats. You're going to become lethargic. You're going to become feeling dizzy. Once that stuff happens, that means your insulin is way too high. You don't have enough carbs. I mean, a lot of people use a rule of thumb, 10 carbs per IU when they're using a log, something that ends in Novolog or Humalog. Whereas Novolin, it's a little bit different, or Novolin R is a little bit different, Humalin R is a little bit different. And insulin is over the counter. It's not something that you have to have a prescription for. So I think that's why it becomes more and more prevalent, where people are asking the questions as they learn that they don't require a prescription. They can go, you know, in the Walmart pharmacy and buy it. So, guys, when you're messing with insulin, you have to understand the purpose behind it. You have to understand what it's doing to your body. You have to understand the reason you're taking it, not just to get big, but if you don't have the food there and you don't have the food to be shuttled, you don't have the nutrients to be shuttled, you don't have the amount of carbohydrates the body needs, it's not going to put glycogen in the muscle. It's not going to help you grow because you don't have what you need to grow to begin with. If you're only eating a few carbs a meal, you don't need it. It's not something that, you know, a lot of people need in a cut. Usually most people use it for the off season because, one, they're eating mass amounts of food, they're bulking, they're trying to gain more muscle mass. You take the insulin, it's going to help shuttle the nutrients in. You're going to relieve the pancreas. You're going to get more of the nutrients in the muscle. The pumps become bigger because the amount of glycogen that's in there. You have to understand it all and the science behind it. And there's a lot of different ways to use it. One of the main ways I got asked recently by someone who's never used it was they were told to take 5 IUs of insulin, do their fasted cardio, and then bring in the carbs. Can they do that? Yes, they may very well be able to do that. If you wake up and you're doing fasted cardio right before you wake up, the body's liver releases glycogen. Glycogen's in the bloodstream, your natural insulin, the pancreas usually already has released to deal with the glycogen that's coming into the bloodstream. Then you're going to go do your fasted cardio. Now, how long are you going is the question, though. Because you're going to have a spike if you're using a Humalin. If you're using a Lantus, there's no issue at all. Morning and night, you know, 5 IUs in the morning, 7.5 IUs at night. You space them out a good amount of time across each other, and you're helping your body. But if you're using something like Humalin or Humalog or Novolog, there may be a major difference. That may send you into the, into hypo, and that may cause some major issues for you. Now, sorry guys, the video just froze for a second there. Now, there are protocols that, you know, you do take, you know, a couple IUs of insulin, you do your cardio, and then I've seen many protocols like that. It is dangerous if you've never done it before. If you know what you're doing and you're very versed in it, then you know when you need to get the food in. You know what your fast-acting carbs are. You know how fast the cyclic dextrin is going to hit you. You know how fast the carbohydrates that you're using is going to hit you and get into the muscle group. If you don't know any of that, then you are a moron if you do that. Let me repeat that. You will be a moron if you do that, because you don't know what you're dealing with. You don't understand that taking that insulin, going to do your cardio, and not getting your carbs quick enough, you could pass out while doing cardio. You could go right into a diabetic coma while doing your cardio. You know, the things to have on hand, guys, if you're using insulin and you're experienced or not experienced, there's things that you should have on hand. You should have some glucose tabs, something very quick acting, just in case you do go hypo. You should have, you know, some quick acting sugars always with you while you're training. If you're trying, the point is that you're trying to shuttle nutrients, and you should have some good EAAs and BCAAs, creatine monohydrate, some other things, you know, inside a shake that you use. And that's a kind of an old school Milos method, you know, where he makes these shakes, highly branched cyclic dextrin or maltodextrin, throwing in, you know, the EAAs, BCAAs. He talks about it a lot, guys, so it's a really good person to listen to and get his old school philosophies on it. Now, personally, if I'm going to use insulin, I'm going to try to find Lantus. I'm going to use an AM and PM dose, much easier on the body, much easier on the pancreas, much easier on the betas. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. So not all insulins are created equal. If you're getting like a Humulin R and you're getting a double spike, you know you're not going to take it every single meal because you're having two spikes. You're going to have, you know, a first spike and it creates a second spike. On that second spike, you know, you want that meal to still be coming in. And the second meal, where the first meal covers the first spike, second meal covers the second one. There's some other types of insulin out there that are newer. There's a new nasal one that goes in, and it's supposed to be really, really good. I have no experience with it, so I'm not really going to talk about it, but I do know it's on the market. It's something that just came out. There's other forms of glucose disposal agents, or, you know, like glucophage, which is going to be your metformins. A lot of people don't realize metformin will not help you grow. It actually decreases the amount of muscle you're able to put on in an off season. And I hear a lot of people telling me lately, I'm going to use metformin in my off season, this and this and this. Metformin may be able to stabilize your blood sugar, but now you're not having a huge insulin spike, so you're not going to shuttle nutrients in. Much better to use at other periods of time in bodybuilding. Not the best choice at all the time. But definitely not to use in a bulk. We're coming out of a bulk into a prep. I understand the use of it. A lot of people like to use it to keep their blood sugar stable for a long period of time. It does very good at that. It keeps it lower. Obviously, you know, if our blood sugar is lower, we're going to be able to get more fat off. But you have to understand, guys, what you're using, how you're using it, when you're going to use it, when you're going to take it, what you're going to take it with. So, all that being said, getting down to one thing. First of all, know your types of insulins. Know what your Humalogs and Novalogs do. Know that they're a faster acting insulin. Know the reaction time of the insulin. Know how many carbs it takes. You know, the basics is 10 carbs per IU for your logs. With your Humulins and your Novolins, with your Humulin and Novolin Rs, which are very popular because they're easy to get, they're over the counter. You know, you can walk in Walmart, Walgreens, anywhere and just buy them. You don't have to have a prescription. All you got to do is tell them you want it. You know, with those there's a different protocol. You got to know your carb timing. And then let's talk about loading, because that's a question I get a lot, even from my competitors all the way through people who would just ask for advice. Should I insulin load? Should I insulin load? Should I insulin load? From experience, insulin loading can ruin your physique if you don't know how you do it. My experience is, if I'm going to insulin load somebody, and we're going to use insulin, we're going to use small IU doses, nothing ever big. We're going to use a faster acting insulin, and we're going to use it after our natural insulin has came up from the meal, and we're going to add to it to help shuttle these carbs in. Because some of my guys, you know, let's say we're using a bodybuilder that's going to be taking in 300 grams of carbs in the next, 2 hours. We're going to want that to be shuttled around and hit from point A to point B quickly so we can get ready for the next meal. But understand, it can ruin a physique. It can make you look watery if you don't know how to use it. If you use too much of it, you're going to overstress the body. You're going to cause yourself to go hypo, which is going to raise your cortisol. Other things are going to happen. So you have to understand how you're using it and when you're using it. There's a lot of talk I hear you guys asking me about insulin use along with growth hormone. Growth hormone decreases your insulin sensitivity as it is. So there is a lot of use that people do, insulin and growth hormone together. You use the insulin because you have the decreased insulin sensitivity coming from the growth hormone, and that assists the body at getting the food into the system. And that's not just carbohydrates, but that's also protein, guys. Protein does give a blood sugar response, albeit it's not near as high as something that you're going to get from your carbohydrates, from your fast-acting starches and your sugars. It's still a response regardless. And my personal preference with insulin is you always let the natural growth hormone do what it can do, and you add to it with insulin in small doses. There's a lot of other people out there that have the direct opposite way of thought, train of thought, that you eat your carbs, you take your insulin, you make sure your insulin is shuttling everything for you to take the stress completely off the body, and then hopefully the body will raise a little bit of its own insulin to help you shuttle the protein and remainder things around. So guys, I'm hoping this explains a little bit to you. It gives you an insight of what types of insulin there are. It gives you some things to go research. I don't want to give you too much information to make you think you're going to go out there and use it today and be like, oh, this is what I'm going to do because it does this and this and this. Insulin's highly anabolic. It is. It shuttles nutrients in. It does help you grow. It's more anabolic than testosterone. I mean, it is a drug that, can be used. It can be used safely, and it can be used properly, and it can actually provide health benefits to some bodybuilders. But at the same time, it is a drug that can kill you. So if you don't know what you're doing, do not touch it by yourself. Do not just go experiment. Don't read online, so-and-so said do this, because that could be the last thing you ever do in your life, and you have to think about it that way. You have to understand the dangers that come with it, especially when you don't know what you're doing. It can hurt you and it can kill you. I hope this can generate some talk maybe on this underneath. I'll answer questions underneath. I won't answer any questions in PMs, guys. So if you have questions, post them up. Don't be embarrassed if you don't have a clue about it. We'll talk about it. But I want it to be in an open forum where everybody can read it, because I want that double-edged sword to be understood, that on one side it's dangerous, on one side it can be beneficial. And if you have questions, more than likely other people have the same questions as you guys. So I hope that helps. Leave some comments below, ask some questions below. There's a lot of people that come to my page that can chime in also. Y'all enjoy your day. I'm going to train some shoulders. We compete in just a few weeks. So actually, I compete in a few days. So we'll see you guys. I hope this video helps you, and any questions, just ask below. Love you guys.